Guys who are in the mid-30s often come to me as potential clients, and they're like, I'm 35, I really need to find a woman and settle down and get married and blah blah. I'm saying, man, dude, chill. You're just about to hit your peak.
Tsar Experience.
Привit! Greetings from Kiev and welcome to another Vodka Vodcast with me, Connor Klein. And in this episode, we are going to go into the 5 biggest mistakes made by Generation Xers, Gen Xers, when they come to date here in Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia. Now, this is the second video in a 3-part series because in the last podcast, I had 5 biggest mistakes that boomers make when they come here, and the next one logically is going to be the 5 biggest mistakes made by millennials. So 1 or 2 boomers got offended by the last one, but it's all in the spirit of putting you in the best position for when you come here so you avoid these mistakes. Now, not saying of course that only boomers were afflicted by the 5 mistakes that we saw in the last vodcast. Of course, as always, I'll link that down below and up above in a card. If you've missed it and you're more interested in that one, go and check that out. And also in this one, Gen Xers, not entirely the only people caught out by them, but what I find with my coaching here in person, also consulting, and my friends and traveling, my own personal experience here in the last decade, I see these type of mistakes affecting the different age groups more or less. Definitely a lot more than some others. So definitely there's something for you to learn in all the videos, no matter what your age. So Generation X. Now I know technically that it's going to be people from 40 to 57. For the purpose of our video, I'll change that a little bit and say that it's from like 35 to 55. So last week I did boomers, and I said it was kind of, I just put it easier for us to be able to put it in the context of dating here in Eastern Europe. So I know that's a little bit of a gap, about 5 years, but what I see here, it's guys like 35 to 55, and these are the 5 biggest mistakes that I see them making. Now, the first one is that they need to deprogram themselves from the kind of standard polite norms of the West, right? So obviously, these are 5 biggest mistakes made by Western Gen Xers. Probably should have said at the beginning, in other cultures might be as afflicted by this, but it's the thing that I have to coach guys the most on when they come here in person. I basically have to take their phone off them and when I look at the message and go crazy a few times because they are way too polite. Politeness, I understand why you do it, and I mean it doesn't just affect guys between 35 and 55, also a little bit the boomers, less so the millennials. I find it's just that they're too formulaic and too polite, and that gets taken as a sign of either weakness here in Eastern Europe, unfortunately. So being polite doesn't really get you, or being rude. Like, think of the stereotype of the Russian or Ukrainian guy. He's a little bit uncouth, and they have a reputation, especially rich Russians will say, going to Western Europe, of being rude and obnoxious. And for better or worse, that's what women normally are attracted to here, because what is seen as a real man. Now, you don't have to be obnoxious, but you can't be so polite with women. And a lot of that comes from just the dating norms. Men lead. You've heard me talk about real man mindset, and I will make a primer video on that in a couple of weeks here on the channel, another vodcast about what is that real man. So basically, you need to stop asking questions, right? So if you're planning a date, you're inviting a woman out here in Eastern Europe, don't ask her where she wants to go. There are 2 good reasons for that. One is the one I'm talking about, is that basically you'll be seen as weak or incompetent is the other thing, because you don't know how to plan a date. She is not going to offer to pay 99.999% of the time. You're the one paying, you're the one making the decision. So you need to lead and say, we go here at this time, make it really simple. But what I find is what a lot of guys, 35 to 55, they start asking lots of questions. Hey, what would you like to do? Is this place good? Like, stop asking the questions, right? So that is seen as polite in the West. I know you're not doing it because if you are a Gen X, or because you or someone else from the West who's doing this when you come here, not doing it because you're incompetent necessarily. It's just it's the standard decorum in the West to do that, and it doesn't work here. whatsoever. The other problem, big problem with that, in terms of asking too many questions, especially about where to go on a date, is you're at the mercy of the scammers straight away, because they're going to be like, oh yeah baby, it's Christmas today, because they can just lead you to a restaurant where they're going to get kickback from, so they're going to make money out of the date, boost their Instagram profile by taking lots of nice video clips, and leave you maybe $1,000 worse off than when you came, because that is the average scam value is probably of the restaurant nightclub scam, maybe even more than that. I'd say somewhere between $1,000 and $1,500 US. So you definitely do not want to fall victim to that. So that's the first big mistake that I see Gen Xers make here, and it is one that's kind of universal, I think, less so with millennials, is that they are too damn polite because they're in their own culture, need to deprogram that a certain amount and get used to being here. Of course, the way to accelerate that is watching more of my content or other good YouTubers here who describe what it's really like, or taking some personal coaching. So that's his way to accelerate the process. But rule number one, you need to deprogram yourself from Western cultural norms. So the second big mistake that I see Gen Xers make when they come here to Eastern Europe is they have a scarcity mindset. They look hungrily at the women of Eastern Europe like they have never seen a beautiful woman before, and that is a consequence of scarcity. They just aren't used to being in an environment where there's so many beautiful women. But the problem with that is, if you look like you have scarcity, you come across as very needy and automatically lower status than, say, a local guy here who's maybe got the exact same characteristics of you. He's used, or a foreigner, another foreigner, maybe like me, who lives here for a long time in Eastern Europe. You know, the novelty factor of the beautiful women wears off pretty quickly when you actually spend a lot of time here. So then they just become normal. And that is the key difference. If you appear like you have never been on a date with a beautiful woman before, you're gonna look lower status than you necessarily need to look. So you need to acclimatize yourself to just the overkill of natural beauty amongst the women here in Eastern Europe, and basically not treat them extra special because of their beauty. It's a very poor tactic in general, not just here. And for sure, you do not want to pedestalize the women because of their beauty, because again, that just looks very low status. And some of the ways you see guys doing that is that they make too much of an effort. They're too over-invested too quickly before they get to know the woman that they're interested in here. And it doesn't really matter if that's a woman you meet in person, you know, you can walk around the streets here in Hrshady and do day game, or you can be out clubbing and in the bars and meeting women socially that way, or you know, you've been on some apps and then you go out on a date, or it's through your social circle. It doesn't really matter. If you look like you are not used to having beautiful women in your life, it will come across as needy, and it look like you don't have abundance. All keywords that you know probably heard in my videos before. So that is the second biggest mistake. They just look too needy, and yeah, they overinvest too much too quickly, considering that they're judging the woman basically on their beauty, and it's a scarcer resource in the West, shall we say. It's not a scarce resource here. So the third biggest mistake that I see made here by guys between 35 and 55, and this is in particular for the guys who are at the lower end of that, who are around 35, is they do not appreciate their own value, because men hit their peak between 35 and 45 in general. I know for some guys it's going to be earlier than that, for some guys it's going to be afterwards, but in general, men, we hit our peak in terms of attractiveness on the sexual marketplace. So you're most attractive to women around 35, but you know, early guys who are in the mid-30s often come to me as potential clients, and they're like, oh, you know, I'm 35, I really need to find a woman and settle down and get married and blah blah. I'm saying, man, dude, chill, you're just about to hit your peak. So no panic, you know, especially if it's a guy you can see and he looks good and he has, you know, a certain amount of status where he's coming from, and financial background, and has some game, at least is able to interact with women. The world's your oyster if you come here. But a lot of guys I see, they don't appreciate that, and they're really they're a little bit desperate and super needy as a result, and it's not necessary. So definitely appreciate your own value. If you're, you know, if obviously when you get to the end of that Gen X and you're 55, then you know, here on the YouTube, very few guys describe themselves as red pillars. They always love to talk about the wall for women. So women, you know, getting a little bit desperate because biologically they're running out of their peak attractiveness. We'll say, in their 30s, but they never talk about the male role. Realistically, at the end of Gen X, you're going to come off the peak for sure. Even if you kept yourself in very good shape and you have high status and you have good game and all of that, not going to be quite the same after that. So definitely no need to panic if you are at the early stages of the Gen X. You're just hitting your peak, and yeah, basically 35 to 45 on average for most men is when they are at the peak sexual attractiveness. That's the third biggest mistake that I see made by Gen Xers. The fourth one is really just a corollary of that third one, which is that as a result, they settle for they go for the lower hanging fruit here in Western Europe. Now, I'm not going to preach to you and tell you have to date a woman who, in terms of her value on the social marketplace, is 9 or 10 if that's not going to make you happy. But ceteris paribus, a lot of guys who come, it's connect to not understanding their true value. And even if they're not desperate about settling down, they come from a place probably also scarcity, and then they just take a woman who maybe, well, say here she's a 5. I'm not a great fan of these numbers, but we'll say she's a 5. The guy is maybe when he comes here in Ukraine, it's actually on the local dating market a 7. Kind of goes down a good bit in what he could get, and that's it. He's happy because back home, that woman would probably be a 7, he would be the 5, so he's happy with that. And I can't tell you what's going to make you happy in life, but I see a lot of guys go for the single mom in her early 30s, and they still want to have children, for example. Well, that's not going to be probably the best match. I mean, it can still work out, but yeah, it's probably not going to be the best match for you. Now, on the other hand, if you were later in the Gen X, you've already had children, you're in your early 50s and you don't want any more, and maybe a single mom in her 30s here is actually going to be a very good option for you. So I understand it just depends on your own goals, but I see a lot of guys, they come here and they're maybe early mid to late 30s, they're hitting their peak, and they come with this scarcity mindset, and as a result they settle for a lower quality woman on the dating marketplace than they should be if they want to reach their potential. But again, maybe it doesn't guarantee happiness that over the long run, so take that one with a pinch of salt maybe. But it's something I see as a mistake in my eyes, at least, if you're trying to maximize your potential when you come here and date. So the fifth and final, and this is definitely the biggest mistake that I see Gen Xers making, is they don't set up their lifestyle so that they can come and live in Eastern Europe, whether it happens to be here in Ukraine, in Russia, or in Belarus, or somewhere else in the former Soviet Union. They come in on a 2-week trip, and that's kind of where the stereotype of the wife hunter comes from. They're on a shopping trip, hoping to go home on the plane with a Mrs. Smith. And that is, for me, the biggest mistake, is not giving themselves enough time. Now, it doesn't just affect Gen Xers, but realistically, I realize that retiring here is not for everybody, and maybe if you don't have your self set up or established yet, if you're a millennial, then it's not the right time to come here. I will go into that in another video. Well, obviously I have the one next week, but I'm actually going to make a video about millennial digital nomads who come here. But basically, you need to figure out how you can, if possible, structure your lifestyle so that you can make your money remotely, or maybe you're independent wealthy, or you're able to achieve that at a certain point, and you can spend at least 3 months here in Ukraine, Belarus, or Russia, because there's another matchmaker has a YouTube channel, and he is married to a Ukrainian girl here, and even he said that the guys who succeed and do the best are the guys who move here. And I mean, I'm also the example of that. I was, when I started off, I was coming for just a short period of time. I was coming on my holidays. I was working as a lawyer in Brussels. I was flying here, but it was never really enough time. So obviously there are two factors there. Obviously you get to, well, first of all, you get to spend just more time. So that's going to give you more opportunities than, the 3 weeks if you have 3 months. And also you're going to be put into a bit of a different bracket if you come here and you're not coming on a short trip. Now, the girls who are, I guess I should call them the green card chicks, let's call them that, the ones who want to leave Eastern Europe, what happens to be here in Ukraine or Russia or Belarus, and they're looking for a guy, a white knight from the West. First of all, there are not so many of those girls who are, have a lot of options, maybe more the girls who don't have some options dating here amongst the local guys in Ukraine or Belarus or Russia, who would still be tempted by that. But first of all, they find it so easy to leave nowadays because there's so many foreigners coming here and communication with Instagram and whatnot. So you're not going to have as many of those green card chicks interest you, but what you are going to have is the sincere, genuine women who actually are interested more in you. And maybe they're open to traveling, maybe even opening to relocating outside Ukraine, but they're not desperate to do it. And they're going to be more interested, in my experience, also with clients, in the guys that come here and set up a life, set up a social circle, and actually invest time in the country, learn the language. Those are the guys who do the best. And if you're hitting your peak, then this is the time to figure that out. How are you going to achieve that? Because, you know, I get guys who join my programs, or they're consulting clients, or they come and live the Zara experience with me. And, you know, I proposition them with that and say, well, you're coming for 2 or 3 weeks. Why aren't you here for 3 to 6 months? They're like, yeah, I don't know, how do I do it? So figure it out, because your options are going to be 5x higher if you actually just come here and spend a lot of time. Now, you don't have to spend 12 months a year. I know the winter is a little bit tough and it's not for everybody, including some of my friends who only come and stay during the summer months. And also I, in general, like to go to Brazil a lot when it's our winter here in Europe. So I understand that you might want to spend all year here, but definitely try to figure out how, or put in place a plan about how you're going to come and spend more time here, because that is the final, and I think the biggest mistake, strategic mistake, that Generation Xers make, guys between 35 and 55, when they are interested in dating the beautiful women of Eastern Europe. And that is, of course, the perfect segue at the end of this video to my premium Move to Ukraine relocation program, which is Slavic Utopia Secrets Ukraine. Down below, it's on demand, and we go into exactly what you need to do if you want to come here and spend 3 to 12 months a year. Vitally, you're going to need an optimal visa strategy. I had a guy who joined recently, and yeah, we spent a lot of time just figuring out exactly what he needed to do, which is going to be the best visa plan for me. Also had a potential citizenship, so I had to figure out how we were going to get him over here on a visa while he gets all that done. And these are the kind of questions, no matter what your situation is, that you need to figure out how you're going to stay longer than the visa free of 90 days every 180. This is how you optimize it. Also, we dive deep into the real estate market. I'm just here off Maidan, the main square, which you're probably familiar with. And there are just amazing real estate opportunities here in Ukraine. It could also be, obviously, in Belarus. I have a separate program for Belarus, also down below if you're interested, and there will be one coming out for Russia. But basically, the real estate opportunities are amazing. So that Kiev penthouse overlooking the river, or the Black Sea villa down in Odessa, Mama, maybe you're able to afford that back home, but maybe not. And it's a possibility right here in Ukraine. Can also be, obviously, something commensurate in Russia or in Belarus. We deal with stuff like how to overcome the language barrier, because it is a real struggle here for guys when they come and move. You either got to figure out how you're going to learn Russian or Ukrainian, or at least how you're going to cope with it in the short run until you get to that stage where you're competent in the local language, because English is not as widely spoken in this region, anything like in Central Europe or in Western Europe. Just not going to be the same experience, and that is really important to have a strategy for that. And also we go into the business opportunities and the medical system here, because they're also quite essential to get right, so you have a plan in case something happens to you, or you don't want to miss out on the huge business opportunities in the region. It's all down below. And because I mentioned the one about Russia, that will be coming up later in the year. So the way to find out about that, or about any of my premium programs, is to be on my free mailing list. Down below there's a link. I'll give you a free gift, which is the Zara's hotspots for Kiev and Odessa, also got Minsk in Belarus. Completely free. Put in your email address, confirm your email, and you get that. And then later on, you'll be notified when I'm opening up my new programs, including the one for spending 3 to 12 months in Russia. So that's coming up in a few months. Just finishing up the first season of the Belarus program. It's super exciting to be on that and deal with moving to Belarus and kind of unique set of issues, and maybe you could also say possibilities of doing that, because there are definitely good reasons to be in Belarus, and also reasons why it's not the best place to set up your base. But anyways, that is what I deal with on the premium programs, when I take you and we examine your situation, we figure out what is the optimal process for you to come here. I am rambling on at the end of this video. I'm super excited to go to the next podcast, which will be millennials, the 5 biggest mistakes that they make here dating. It is absolutely phenomenal end to the day. I wasn't going to film today because the weather kind of sucked, and then just about an hour ago the sun came out, so I said let's do a vodcast. Got my Dan. Probably going to see the Hotel Ukraina just behind me, and I'm going to enjoy a Friday evening here, do a little bit of bar hopping, maybe a bit of clubbing later on with some former clients of mine who are here, who've actually moved to Ukraine. Both of them moved to Kiev, and actually I might be doing another vodcast with one of them, my expat series in Ukraine. Anyways, all that good stuff is to come. Let me know what you think of the 5 biggest mistakes, how I describe them. Maybe you've you made them yourself and you learned from them, or maybe you think they're even bigger mistakes for the Gen Xers. I called them X-Geners in the last video, which is kind of funny. Anyways, see you very soon in the next vodcast, the next video. Do побачення, до свидання from Free Ukraine. As you can see also, not so many people walk past with masks, I assume, in the background over there on the viewfinder. See you anyways in the very next video. Ciao, ciao.
SAR Experience.